You've been in charge for the last 3.5 years. If people think the country's off on the wrong track, whether that's on the economy or immigration or any other issue, why should we leave you in charge? I mean, she had a job on the border that Joe Biden gave her. That's been a failure. She was the last person in the room on Afghanistan. That was a failure. And on economic policy, which the president sets, well, she had to go up to the Capitol and cast the deciding votes in the U.S. Senate. So to me, vector number one is just not letting her forget that she has a current job and that she failed at it, and that it's why the 35 to 37% of the American people approve of it and the rest don't.
I hope you had a great weekend. A lot to get to. We are in the sprint to the end, Election Day. But remember, early voting is starting in a few, like a week, maybe 2 weeks. North Carolina, Pennsylvania, others. If you ever want to know, I put a link on my website, SeanSpicer.com. There's a thing that says resources. I've tried to put helpful political links. If you ever find one, let me know. But one of them actually is a guide to early state voting. So if you're interested or just want to know, go check that out. Big show today. Big show. First of all, talk about big shows. That show with James Blair last week went crazy. I appreciate everyone who sent it around. The Trump political director breaking down where they are state by state. A lot of other interesting nuggets talking about the ground game. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. But it went viral. So you're probably wondering, why is everyone talking about it? Well, if you haven't seen it, go do it. But for those of you who watched and shared, thank you for that. Big news on Friday, RFK endorsing Donald Trump. I'm going to talk to you about that. His former political strategist is here with us just a little bit, Link Lauren, who's going to talk about the impact and what they did right, what he can translate to the Trump movement. We'll break that down. Plus, Scott Jennings. You may have seen a bunch of his viral videos. He is the guy on CNN that Donald Trump and his team keep reposting videos of because of the common sense, strategic value of what he's saying that a lot of people just don't fully appreciate. And Scott is a welcome voice of common sense. And we're going to talk to him about the state of the race. Debate about debates. Kamala Harris now trying to tweak the rules that she claims that everybody had to agree to, like a week ago? And now suddenly it's, I get to change the rules. She doesn't want the mic shut off anymore. Now she wants them on, but her team, it's funny. They kind of politically are like her on issues. They'll flip-flop on anything to get their way, won't they? All right. Before we get to all that, I want to tell you about what's going on in the world. We've seen politically things can change at any moment. Well, so can they at any time, right? If you are concerned about, as I am, about what's going on in the world, you want to have a Patriot Power Generator 2000X in your house. I have one now. Go to 4patriots.com/Spicer to get yours. But just like everything has changed so unexpectedly in the political world, it can change in the real world in terms of our electricity, natural disasters, hits on the electrical grid, attacks. You don't know what's coming. I want to be prepared for me and my family. And that's why I have a Patriot Power Generator 2000X. Now, I used to just have a regular generator. You'd pour gas into it and be ready to go. But you got to think about things. You'll need the gas. You need to make sure that if there's a hit on the electrical system, that we can take credit cards and that the gas station is open, all those kind of things. And then you got to deal with the noise and the fumes with a Patriot Power Generator 2000X. It comes with a free solar panel. Sun's never going to close. It'll always work. And that's the beauty. With the Patriot Power Generator 2000X, you can power the most powerful things in your house, your refrigerator, tablets, computers, TVs, whatever, for hours on end. And when you need to recharge it, guess what? It's just the sun that does it. No fumes, no noise, no concerns about electrical grids and all that kind of stuff. This will be your savior. It's portable. You can bring it into your house. You can bring it into your friend's house, your family's house. Go to 4patriots.com/Spicer. and be ready in a time of emergency. 4patriots.com/Spicer. All right. A lot to get to here. I want to talk with Scott Jennings in just a moment and Link Lauren, the political strategist for RFK, about that impact. That's going to be big. The debate on debates, I want to talk about that. Okay? Because I think it's interesting how she's trying to weasel out of the debate now and get her way. And if you're the media and you've given her away, why not? You just are like a little bratty child. You keep getting your way, so why not just keep doing what you do to get your way again? And the media lets you get away with it. But today is the 3rd anniversary of that botched withdrawal from Afghanistan. Now, you remember President Biden said not a single service members died on his watch. False. False, false, false. Today, the White House suddenly decided to find Jesus. And they're praising the service and sacrifice of these 13 American military members. For 3 years, this hasn't been a focus of theirs. Now suddenly, 70 days plus out of a campaign, it's all about that. This is insane. The same way that she flip-flops on all these issues, now suddenly they're trying to pretend that they are huge supporters of these people and the sacrifice they made, because now they need to rebrand themselves. Speaker Mike Johnson put out an unbelievable video. I want to play this for you because I think it really speaks to where we are right now. This is Speaker Mike Johnson. Take a look.
Afghanistan.
Yes.
Were you the last person in the room?
Yes.
And you feel comfortable?
I do.
Dozens were killed when multiple bombs went off near Kabul's Hamid Karzai airport Thursday.
We know that at least 13 U.S. service members were killed in the blast.
He claimed that on his watch, we have not lost any American troops. The lives of no American troops have been lost as long as he's been president. Obviously, that is not true. Apparently, he's already forgotten about the 13 American heroes who were lost with his disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. These are their names, Mr. President. These are their names. Marine Staff Sergeant Taylor Hoover. Marine Sergeant Johanny Rosario Pichardo. Marine Sergeant Nicole G. Marine Corporal Hunter Lopez. Marine Corporal Dagan Page. Marine Corporal Humberto Sanchez. Marine Lance Corporal David Espinoza. Marine Lance Corporal Jared Schmitz. Marine Lance Corporal Riley McCollum. Marine Lance Corporal Dylan Marola. Marine Lance Corporal Kareem Nakui. Navy Petty Officer 3rd Class Maxton Soviak. Army Staff Sergeant Ryan Knaus. We will honor their memory.
You know what else honored their memory? President Trump. He was at Arlington National Cemetery today, just outside of D.C., to pay respect with some of their families. President Biden is at the beach in Rehoboth. Kamala Harris has nothing on her schedule. That's where we are right now. And she's trying to rebrand herself, according to one supporter, as a badass. I'm going to play you that video in just a sec. I want to bring in Scott Jennings. You've seen his viral videos, to get him to respond to this rebranding. And then I want to bring in Link Lauren in just a minute, senior strategist to RFK's campaign previously, to get his take on the RFK endorsement. Before I bring in Scott Jennings, I want to tell you about a really good guy, since I got you down. A really good guy named Leo Grillo. Leo Grillo founded Delta Rescue. Delta Rescue, if you've been watching before, you know that it is a no-kill sanctuary for life. Not a shelter. When I first met Leo, he schooled me on that. Shelters, are where they try to find new homes, where ultimately sometimes they have to euthanize. But no, Delta Rescue, no-kill sanctuary for life. If you go to deltarescue.org and you look at the videos, you'll see what I'm talking about. These neglected and abused animals get the care that they need for life. Nutritional care, veterinarian care, you name it, whatever it is. Leo takes care of them. But the thing is that Leo's can only go so far. It is because of the support of people like me and you, animal lovers, dogs, cats, birds, horses, doesn't matter. Leo takes care of everything. And Delta Rescue, if you go to deltarescue.org, needs our help. Go to deltarescue.org. Please make a contribution, $50, $100, $1,000, whatever you can do. More importantly, if you can go to the estate planning tab and think about making Delta Rescue part of your legacy so that this mission that Leo has started can become an enduring one that can last for decades and generations. Thank you for consideration. Please go to deltarescue.org. All right, without further ado, I want to bring in Scott Jennings from CNN to help break down the debate on debates, RFK, and this attempt by Kamala Harris to rebrand herself yet again as, like I said, one supporter is calling her a badass. Really? On a day like today, that's what you want to do? Selfies and pretty music. Music, by the way, I want you to listen to the lyrics of the song that they put together. As I walk through the valley of death. Yeah, nice. Anyway, without further ado, Scott Jennings. Scott, thanks for being with us. I really appreciate it.
Hey, Sean, good to see you again, my friend.
Yeah, good to see you. So look, as I said a moment ago, this is the third anniversary of this botched withdrawal from Afghanistan. The president, that being Biden, just in case we don't know who's technically in charge, has made light of the fact that no one died on his watch. That clearly was not the case. This morning, the White House and the vice president's office put out statements recognizing this anniversary, very clearly enumerating the names of those killed in action, which seemed kind of odd to me because they really haven't. It's almost like they're overcorrecting at this. Gosh, wouldn't you happen to know it's 70-something days out from the election? But then her side, because it's not her campaign, put out this video, and I want you to take a look at it. All right, I won't critique her salute right now. It's not the appropriate time. Little light on the right shoulder, on the right elbow rather. What do you? I personally, I'll just tell you what I think. I think this is tone deaf. They're trying to overcorrect for something, and I think it's going to backfire. What says Scott Jennings?
Yeah, I think this is one of their biggest vulnerabilities. I mean, when you look back on their administration, where they went underwater was August of 2021 because of the fall of Afghanistan. And she and Biden both went underwater at that point. They've not done anything to acknowledge these soldiers and the families who lost soldiers at that moment. And I suspect that they're anticipating the Republicans, making a deal of this for the campaign. So I understand why they're trying to cure it now. The trouble for her is that, this was one of the most consequential decisions that Biden made. And her words, she was the last person in the room when they made it. And I also suspect they think that national security and just the idea of people visualizing her as commander in chief is probably one of her weakest issues, probably in their polling. And so they're trying to cure that too. I don't like it that they're using the anniversary of this tragedy sort of as a prop for all that. But yeah, I think it's gonna come off a little tone deaf. I'm with you.
All right. So you're a seasoned political operative. You said what I think most operatives: lean into your vulnerabilities, try to show people that you're tough, right? I get she's doing that on crime. I was a tough DA. I fought truancy and blah, 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 blah. This to me, because of the Tim Walz pick, because they've ignored this for 3.5 years, I think that this, as I said, is going to backfire. And that's where I think that the standard political operative says, lean into your vulnerabilities, make it a strength, don't get swift-boated. I'm telling you, I think they're going to wake a sleeping giant in the veteran community on this by trying to be like, I'm sorry, you suddenly care about us?
Yeah, I think that this won't be enough for sure. And I think there's another side of this coin, which is just, there's how you treat our soldiers and how you view the military community, but also how would you be as commander in chief as it relates to policy making and as it relates to keeping the country safe? And do you have the kind of judgment that's required to occupy that part of the job? This is where she's very vulnerable. We have hotspots all over the globe. On Biden and Harris's watch, the globe seems a lot less stable than it did on Donald Trump's watch. So I don't think a couple of gimmicky videos are going to cure that. And I think if Trump is skillful and the Republicans are skillful, they can make this into an advantage. I don't think this is going to be a foreign policy election. But it could be an election about who can you visualize actually having the job. And I do think she's got some length to go there. Final thing, she also hasn't answered any questions about any of this. A video is not a substitute as you know, Sean, for sitting in front of a journalist and answering hard questions about this aspect of the job.
All right, since you brought this up, what would you recommend right now from Team Trump is the strongest line of attack, right? She's a phony, is one. She hasn't put out any policy statements. She won't sit down with the press. She's flip-flopped on issues. She's a far-left San Francisco liberal. A lot to choose from. And I think a lot of people in the media are saying that the Trump campaign hasn't zeroed in on one. If you were advising them right now, what would you say are the 1-2 top issues that they should be leaning into and focusing on that will actually move the needle?
Well, I think the best question he can ask her on every issue, whether this is at the debate or anywhere else, is you've been in charge for the last 3.5 years. If people think the country's off on the wrong track, whether that's on the economy or immigration or any other issue, why should we leave you in charge? That overlays everything. Her current record. She is the current vice president. And it's not like she's been passive. I mean, she had a job on the border that Joe Biden gave her. That's been a failure. She was the last person in the room on Afghanistan. That was a failure. And on economic policy, which the president sets, well, she had to go up to the Capitol and cast the deciding votes in the U.S. Senate. So to me, vector number one is just not letting her forget that she has a current job and that she failed at it. And that it's why the 35 to 37% of the American people, approve of it and the rest don't. So that's vector number one. And number two, I do think at the debate, he has to hold her account for all of the positions she took when she ran for president in 2019. They trying to walk him back, but they're doing it via anonymous press aides. She, in her own words, has never looked into a camera and said, I did support defund the police, now I don't. I did support, single payer, now I don't. I did support, now I don't. So I think he's going to have to not let her off the hook on that. So to me, the two biggest vectors, Sean, are current record, failures as vice president, plus why did your platform change? You were here when you ran for president. Now you claim not to be. Are we supposed to believe that you all of a sudden became a moderate person instead of a liberal? That's been kind of the hallmark of your entire career.
Yeah. The funny thing is there is so much to choose from, though.
Okay. By the way, I'm not the San Francisco stuff. Going all the way back to California, that doesn't interest me as much because it's not as recent. I mean, I think it's important that
Well, no, it's not as recent, but more of the tagline that you're a San Francisco liberal that wants to move this country further left. I agree. Like the DA stuff, yeah, fine, whatever. But I feel like a lot of people want to tag her as like kind of a la Nancy Pelosi. You're a San Francisco liberal. I just don't know that. Or you call it what you will. Maybe you don't call her a San Francisco liberal, but you call her a crazy left liberal. But there's this element of Team Trump that wants to brand her as far left, crazy, extreme.
Well, I think you can do that with her voting record, her policy positions, and her issues. I mean, would you rather be a San Francisco liberal or would you rather be Joe Biden's top lieutenant? I mean, you got to remember, Biden is still extremely unpopular. Right. I mean, this guy and his administration is unpopular. Nobody thinks he's done a good job. I mean, there's a lot of unpopularity associated with the decisions she made in the last 3.5 years. Truthfully, I don't know what the correct answer is. I understand the impulse for each of them. It just strikes me that the thing that they're trying to do is wipe off the fact that she's an incumbent. And Republicans have to remind everybody she is an incumbent. She has a job now. She's in office. She's making decisions right now. And by the way, you've told us repeatedly in polling that you don't like those decisions. So let's not let her absolve herself of the failure of this administration.
Yeah, no, and I agree. I mean, look, I've said this repeatedly, and I think you'd agree that because I think I see enough of the comments that you make go viral that just using her words. Here's what she said about X, fill in the blank. The words that she uses connote such a far leftist frame of mind that I would just keep playing her. And not, stop making the attack saying this is what she said on X issue and just start playing her and let her defend her as opposed to, that attack isn't true. It was taken out of context. Just play her. Because I think most people, when they actually get to know the real Kamala Harris, aren't going to like her.
Yeah, certainly they won't like her policy positions. I mean, she was even too far left for the Democratic primary, right. Back in 2019. And so if you're too far left for your own party's primary, you're too far left for the country. I mean, it would be kind of a fascinating exploration to ask her how it is that you arrived at this platform before and now you have completely repudiated all of it now. I do think there's a rejection in our politics right now, Sean, of inauthenticity, phoniness. And the idea that you could be for all this thing and now you're totally against it and we can trust you on that. I think people will sometimes forgive wacky policy positions as long as they think you're being real with them. And so she's obviously not being real with us on one front. Were you not being real then, or are you not being real now?
Well, and that's why I presented that sort of menu of options, because she's a phony. She'll be whoever you want. She has no core. She's literally like, she wants to say she's tough on crime and then let out the BLM protesters. She wants to say that she's tough on the border when she had an open border policy and she didn't get to the root causes. She'll be for whatever she needs to be to get, to advance herself and to get more power. Frankly, that's the core of the Democratic Party in the leftist movement, is it's all about power and control. And I think that she has exemplified that by being whatever she needs to be to whomever she needs to be at that particular moment.
Yeah, I think too, there's also something to be said for the downstream effects of electing another Democrat. I mean, the Senate Democrats have made it pretty clear what they want to do. If they could arrange it the way they wanted, they would go over to the Capitol. They would eliminate the filibuster. And when you do that and you have a president and an administration that's malleable on this stuff, they would enact a bunch of terrible things. So it's not just the things that she said she wanted to do before. It's also all the new things that have come up ever since. Do you have any doubt that if Democrats controlled the Senate, or it was a 50-50 Senate and they had Tim Walz as vice president, that they would eliminate the filibuster and just start ticking off all their liberal wish list? That's the thing. It's one thing for her to say she no longer is for these things because she believes she needs to govern from the center as president. But it's totally another thing that when you get in there and you're just one vote away from being able to do anything you want to do, there's just not much barrier between her and what could be an extremely radical presidency. Look, Biden did this. Biden ran as some deal-making moderate. He turned out to be one of the most liberal administrations that we ever had. Why should we believe she's any different? She's a liberal. Now she's claiming to be a moderate. Why should we believe that the person who just participated in this hoax isn't doing the exact same thing again?
Yeah. No, another example of I'll say whatever I didn't know anything about Joe Biden. No, but I want to kind of run through a bunch of issues quickly if we can, because I want to start with I want to get to the debates, but let's start with the quote unquote interview. If you read the media, she has claimed to do an interview, and she's quote going to do an interview this week because the month ends, and she promised to do one. I still don't. So let me just start with this. Do you think she actually conducts an interview with a credentialed member of the media by the end of the week? Yes or no?
Oh, gosh. I think probably yes. But it wouldn't shock me if they renege on this on this promise. But if I were her,
but, okay. So that being said, let's just pretend they call Scott Jennings and they say, Scott, we love your commentary, we love it, and we need your political acumen. Who should we sit down with? And just, I get it. Like, I'm not, but if you had to be objective right now, who would you tell them to do an interview with?
Oh, God. Well, I would want to do an interview with someone that would be considered to be the most credible. Somebody who, in the aftermath of it, wouldn't be viewed as someone who has thrown them a bunch of softballs just to get them off the hook of this promise. So that I would pick somebody who's viewed as a real, tested, credible journalist. And so, there's a bunch of them out there, but I would not pick something that in the aftermath people would say, oh, yeah, of course. You just,
let me ask you this, because so politically, operative to operative speaking, I agree with you. I remember, I don't want to go down this path, but I agree with you. Pick someone, take it head on, and then no one can complain that you didn't, right? So you choose someone who, I remember, I think it was Obama did Bill O'Reilly, the Super Bowl and it was like, people were like, well, you can't say you didn't take a tough interview, right?
Right.
Granted, Fox had that. I mean, that's a different circumstance because Fox had the Super Bowl, but he didn't back away from it, and I think he got a little credibility. Let me kind of throw this out at you and tell me what you think. She's gotten a pass already. I mean, she basically said, when we do an interview in a month, and everyone's like, all right, we'll see you then.
Yeah.
Right? They didn't give her any pushback then. If I'm her team, why not roll the dice and say, you know what? Let's just check the box. Let me pick somebody who I can, quote unquote mainstream. So I go to Kristen Welker at NBC, or Eugene Daniels at Politico, who basically is a paid employee of the Kamala Harris campaign, and say, I did an interview, but now it's up to you guys in the press corps. Because if you don't, I know that they're going to be favorable to me because we've all watched them. Those two just are tip of the iceberg. I can check a box. I know you guys in the media won't criticize them because they're part of your family. So I get to say I did it, and I know you won't critique me. Why not do that?
I mean, that's one way to handle it. But if she doesn't, and no matter who she picks, if she doesn't get the kinds of questions that you and I are discussing, here's your past statements, here's your current statements, here's your decisions that you made as vice president. If she doesn't get that kind of cadence or that kind of questioning, if it's all just fluff, if it's all just, I don't think it's going to matter who does it. It's still going to leave her.
I think in a normal world,
understand
you're
your
right,
impulse.
but I don't. In a normal world, you're right, Scott. But I feel like they won't criticize one of their own, so they're going to say, "Well, she did it, yay." I mean, I guess that's my thing. Is I think this is a box checking exercise. I think she picked somebody, and all of the press corps has to sit on their hands and say, "I agree. I don't. That was ridiculous. It wasn't that tough. They didn't ask these 10 questions." But they can't criticize because they cannot go after one of their own.
I guess the devil's advocate on this is the American people expect presidential candidates to be tested, and ultimately it will become a problem if they're not. And so if you wind up,
but I think that this goes back to my point, though. I think that when X% of the American public get their get their information filtered by these guys, and the answer that you get on the Today Show or Good Morning America when you wake up and goes, Kamala Harris sat for her first tough interview, because they're not going to frame it as a softball. They're going to protect their own. And that's the thing, is that I think that, and you go, oh, I didn't know that. She did an interview. Okay, good. It's like when you read stories and you hear these things that in studies, people only read the headline. They don't get to the bottom. So no one's going to go, let me read the transcript of the interview. They're going to go, oh, she sat down with an interview with Kristen Welker. Okay, easy. Okay, great, check box. All right, I want to pivot to two more issues. One, big thing today, debate on debates. She's supposed to do this debate on September 10th. Somehow, when Trump agreed to it with Biden, that was sacrosanct. It had to be kept in, even though that was for Biden. Now, Kamala Harris's team wants to change the rules. They want to have the mics on the whole time. And Trump's team is saying, wait a second. So we had to agree to hold the debates, but now you get to change the rule. So does this debate happen, in your opinion, and how does it end? Do they all agree on the rules, or?
So I think it will happen. I think Trump needs it to happen, actually, for some of the reasons we've just been discussing. He, at some point, he has to, in a public forum, go after her about her record and her positions. If that doesn't happen, it is a huge detriment, I think, to Trump. We have to see some exploration of this. And I've said it's all on his shoulders. I don't think we can expect anyone else to do the job for him. And so it's all on his shoulders.
Who's got more riding on it? Who's got more riding on that debate, him or her?
Well, I think they both have a lot riding on it. But I think, honestly, if Trump cannot prosecute a case against her at some point on her current record, remind everyone she's the current VP and that she had this radical agenda, that's a huge problem. She cannot be allowed to reinvent herself. She cannot be allowed to say, I just landed here in a spaceship 6 weeks ago. I'll take it from here. She has a record. She has been at the center of American life and public affairs for the last several years. She has a voting record. She has a presidential platform, and she has a record as vice president. I don't know that that's going to get explored correctly and deeply outside of this debate. So I guess from that perspective, I think Trump has a lot riding on it, because if that goes unexplored, or if we just wash that whole thing away, and she's, ultimately, what are they trying to do? They're trying to make her generic Democrat, right? She just generic Democrat, whatever you want your Democrat to be, that's what she'll be. That's what they want the American people to believe. He cannot run and be allowed to, or have to run against generic Democrat. He needs to run against what she is, which is radical Democrat or failed vice president or Joe Biden's top lieutenant, whatever you want to call it. That's what he has to run against. And to me, the debate is where he's going to make that case. So I think he does have a lot riding on it, and I hope they get it together because he needs it.
All right, two more things. One, RFK, does he make a difference? Does he help Trump or hurt him?
marginal difference, I think. I understand the impulse to do it. I'm a little worried about the downstream risk of taking on a surrogate like that. I mean, once you take on a surrogate, you sort of own everything they do, and so it would worry me a little.
I think if used appropriately, he could be super helpful. I'm going to talk about that in just a minute, but
Sure.
I get your point. But I also don't think that everything.
The political impact, though, is clear. You know, Trump does best with lower propensity voters, lower propensity male voters. You know, this is the RFK audience. And so to the extent that he further stimulates a group of people that are inclined to like Trump anyway to actually show up and vote. Also, he is a Kennedy, and they will draw a crowd. You know, I mean, if this guy's name were, you know, Bob Johnson from Idaho, we wouldn't care what he thought. But he's a Kennedy, and so people will show up to listen to what they have to say. So I totally understand the political desire to do it. You know, surrogates make me nervous. You know, especially ones that are hot. And so, but you and I are old comms guys. It's like, let's have a surrogate operation, but make sure they don't say anything crazy. So it worries me a little bit.
Speaking of like a surrogate operation, I want to end with this. Like you are sort of a voice for reason and common sense. And I wouldn't say just at CNN, because I think a lot of these clips, I can see Team Trump continuously promoting the clips and you say, and just on a personal level, like you've always been kind of doing it. Do you feel like you just got to, I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. It's not like you've always said smart, intelligent, strategic things, right? How do you find the newfound attention, I guess is the best way to approach this? Because suddenly, is it that, because so many times I feel like we've got these people in the political sphere who say stupid things, who've never been in the game. And I feel like sometimes you're saying things that you're just, that a smart, seasoned political operative would say, because you get it, and you're surrounded by people who've never played the game. I don't know. How do you when you get these clips that are going nuts and people are clearly, obviously approaching you and Team Trump is promoting what you say, how has it been for you personally?
Well, most people who come up to me are exceedingly nice. Even at the Democrat convention in Chicago, I didn't know what to expect, but I probably took 1,000 selfies with people there. I mean, people were very nice and very complimentary. And I don't think I'm materially different today than I have been. I've been doing this job for 7 years, but I do think when you're in the middle of a presidential campaign, it obviously magnifies everything the media is doing. And remember, back in 2020, there was no real campaign. We were all stuck in our little boxes. Right. There were no events. So a lot of that got washed. We know there were no conventions to go to, so a lot of that got washed away. But I think the attention on this campaign, and then it got even more heightened when Harris got in and Biden dropped out. I guess that's why it's happening. And just the focus of a real campaign. We have not had a real campaign since 2016. That's the last time we had an actual real, in your face, we're on the road, we're out in the public doing stuff, real campaign. So honestly, it's been fun. I think CNN letting me and David Urban do what we do over there, I think it's good. I think it's good for people to hear debate. I don't think it's good for people to live in bubbles. I think it's good for people to hear debate and to hear some counter arguments. And I'm trying to do the best I can to make factual counter arguments that I think represent not just Republicans, but also middle America. I come from Kentucky, and I think a lot of commentary sometimes is just beltway, conventional wisdom. People get up in the morning, they read the rags, and then they go on TV and they regurgitate what they read. I'm trying to also sort of tell you how it's going to be seen in flyover country, middle America, and that's part of the value of the job for me. So it's been a lot of fun. CNN's been great to let me do it.
Well, good. I mean, and that's like I said, I think you bring an element of not just political, but you really bring hey, I've been on the ground. I've been part of a campaign. This is how it works. And I think that's crucial to understanding the game. So I appreciate you sharing your time with us today. Thanks for being here, and good luck in the final 70 days over there. Thanks,
Sean. I appreciate it. Good to see you again, brother.
All right. I want to thank Scott for that. I just want you to know we weren't able to show the video of Scott because of CNN rules that didn't permit it. He has a contract with CNN, and Unfortunately, we were not able to show the full video. I appreciate Scott's insight. I want to bring in now Link Lauren, former strategist to RFK Jr.'s campaign. Here's a little of what RFK had to say about Donald Trump and why he was endorsing him.
Chronic disease crisis was one of the primary reasons for my running for president, along with ending censorship in the Ukraine war. It's the reason I've made the heart-wrenching decision to suspend my campaign and to support President Trump.
Hey, Link, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks, Sean, for having me.
All right, I've heard everybody give their take on the impact that RFK's endorsement is going to have on the race. What do you think?
I mean, I definitely think it's consequential. As you know, Sean, in so many of these swing states where it's razor thin, every little bit counts. Look at Arizona. There was 0.3% difference between Trump and Biden in 2020. So having Kennedy out of the race is definitely a very good thing for Donald Trump.
Yeah, you and I, same page on this. These people who don't get that, I don't understand. Mm-hmm. I mean, I felt like they laid down a ton of oppo on that campaign. And my take is, one, I'm with you. This was close. And two, if you didn't think it was that big of a deal, why'd you spend so much money going after the guy?
No, exactly. The DNC hired a team of people to take down the Kennedy campaign. So they were digging up everything. And look, Bobby's very open about his past. He hasn't been a perfect guy his entire life, leaving dead bears in Central Park and the like. So there were a lot of things to bring up out of the woodwork. But he still was very consequential near the end. He was still at 5-6% in a lot of these polls. So it's definitely going to make a difference come November 5th.
Can I just ask you, it's funny, I get asked all the time when I was working for Trump, like, what did you think about this moment? What did you think about that moment? When you're working for the guy and it's like, Link, I got to tell you, there's a dead bear in Central Park. I mean, like, when you heard some of the story, were you like, okay, here we go again? Or was it like I came to get used to it with Trump. Like, how did you handle suddenly hearing stories where like, I didn't think that was going to shape my Monday or Tuesday?
So a few things. A lot of my friends who've been in politics for 10, 20 years, this is obviously my first election. They're like, Link, this is not normal. You're having trial by fire. None of these are normal stories. You're very numb to all of this because you've been working on the Kennedy campaign. You need to realize this is not normal. My first day on the campaign, I remember his daughter-in-law joking with me about how he loves to pick up roadkill. So I'm thinking, oh, little bits of roadkill here and there. I never imagined a whole entire bear and then leaving it in Central Park in the middle of the night. So I knew the guy liked to pick up roadkill. He's very eccentric. I don't like to get that dirty, but for him, I never expected a full bear, Sean.
Yeah, I've heard of a lot of eccentric things, like being like, guess what? The boss likes roadkill. I'd be like, that's and especially a Kennedy. Like I wouldn't expect that. That's not one that I would expect. All right, Kennedy did very, very well with young men in particular. There was something that, so what was your secret sauce? Like, how was it just what he said, where he went? Like, what was it that you noticed was interesting to them?
So for the most part, a lot of these mainstream media news organizations were not giving us interviews. So we were going to TikTok, X, Instagram, and that's where you find a lot of these young Gen Zs and millennials. And so that's where we were boosting out our content. I mean, our State of the Union we worked on reached 40 million people, 50 million people. But one thing I will say, just as a suggestion to Trump and Kennedy, they've doubled down on a lot of these guys, these young males online. If I were them, I would start focusing on some suburban women in swing states. Why not do some of those podcasts? I feel like they've done Theo Vaughn, they've done Full Send, they've done all the bro podcasts, which is great. But now let's try to bring in some suburban women.
And was this your idea or someone else's idea, or was it Bobby's?
So to do the social media was kind of a group decision. It was also out of necessity because we didn't have a huge budget to travel at the time. A lot of these news organizations didn't want to cover him so much or platform him, which is the word they all like to use. So we just started going to social media. The campaign actually found me on TikTok. So coming into the campaign, I already knew that I was going to focus on TikTok, social media, and all of these platforms because you can kind of circumvent the mainstream media by going directly to the people.
You know what I find interesting? You mentioned a few of those that you guys went to. When you look at the views, I was looking at Theo Vaughn. Okay, so Trump did Theo Vaughn the other day. I've got it up on my computer, I think right here. As we're speaking, 11,230,056 views.
Totally.
Okay, but you tell me, I think if you walk down the street and you said to somebody, who's Theo Vaughn, I would say a lot of people my age and older and a lot of people in the legacy media would be like, who? And yet that's Trump's interview. 11 million people have viewed that, right? Not to mention the Elon Spaces, the Nelk Boys, a couple of these others. To me, so when you had these conversations with Bobby, was he like, I don't know who this is, or was he receptive to it? Or maybe option 3 is once he saw how effective it was, he said, yeah, I like this. Let's do more.
No, he was pretty receptive, and he loves going on where they're fun guys, where it's going to be a fun conversation. For me, though, even though I was sort of the Gen Z social media person, I was always pushing us to go on the mainstream media because you have to reach baby boomers, you have to reach seniors. That's the audience who disliked him the most. We had the young people. In fact, his name ID amongst Gen Z just skyrocketed very quickly into the campaign. We needed to get out there and reach a lot of these baby boomers. Hopefully now that he's out of the race and he's aligned with Trump, he'll start doing more of these mainstream interviews, but time will have to tell.
Okay, so if you're the Trump campaign and they call you and say, Link, you did a great job with Bobby. What do we need to do to either harness Bobby's support or do what Bobby did? What is your response?
I would really allow Bobby to focus on the things he's super passionate and knowledgeable about. So he is so passionate about chronic disease. It's part of the reason he got into the race back in April of 2023. So I would keep him focused on doing those sorts of things, reaching out. I'd put him out there on the trail as a surrogate. I think now that he's out of the race, also people are going to even be more friendly. They want to show up, see what all this is about. After the iconic moment in Arizona a couple of days ago, I think he could definitely pack some rooms in some of these swing states. So I'd put him out on the road as a surrogate. I don't think he needs to be tied to Donald Trump every single day. Donald Trump doesn't need a supporting character. They don't need some Thelma and Louise. Donald Trump can be the star. RFK can go out and do surrogate work. And I think he'd be incredibly effective at that.
So Bobby and his running mate, Nicole Shanahan, made it very clear, and you alluded to this, that the DNC spent a lot of money coming after him. Give us some example of like the tactics that they employed to take you guys down.
So we had lawsuits coming at us from every single angle, right? They were suing us in so many of these states to keep us off the ballot. They were also going online and holding press conferences. Everything the campaign did, they were coming at us, digging things up out of the woodwork, calling all of his exes, calling his family members. His family members were pretty open about denouncing him, but ironically, I don't think these Kerry Kennedys and all of those family members have that much clout. Like, I don't think anyone in my generation could pick Kerry Kennedy out of a lineup. So when his whole family was turning on him while I was on the campaign, I was like, who are these fringe Kennedys? I don't know who these people are, so I didn't really even know who RFK Jr. was until last year, right? So a lot of young people were sort of new to this, and I didn't focus too much on the DNC attacks. Between you and me, Sean, I felt like the DNC attacks were kind of preaching to the choir of people who weren't going to vote for him anyway, right? So like the DNC is using their comms team to go out there and say how horrible RFK Jr. is, but they're going on MSNBC. That audience doesn't like him to begin with. So what's the point, right? I didn't think it mattered that much.
RFK said that, if the system wasn't rigged, he could have, he said this, in an honest system, I believe I would have won the election. I no longer believe that I have a realistic path of electoral victory in the face of this relentlessness. Do you think that the system is truly rigged if you're not part of the system?
I definitely think the two-party system likes to keep it that way. I don't think they love independent third-party challengers. But if you look at Ross Perot, he got 19% of the vote back in 1992. If you look at almost every developed nation in the West, they have a strong third party. So I think it's maybe going to be 10, 20 years till we have one as well. I also think there were issues we had on our campaign, right? We didn't run a perfect campaign. He would be the first to admit that. And so it definitely felt like Trump's moment. In fact, I went to Iowa for the Iowa caucus in January and ended up in that horrible blizzard. I'm sure you were in that blizzard as well. And when I came back, it just became very clear this was going to be a race between Trump and Biden or whoever the Democrats slotted in. So I put together a whole strategy memo on January 20th telling Bobby, go talk to Trump. See if you can work with Trump on chronic disease, ending the forever war, securing the border, calling out big pharma, all the things you're passionate about. So it's very much a strategy memo about let's do this unity ticket, let's converge the two campaigns. At that time in January, people weren't really feeling it. And it's not really orthodox for a campaign staffer to advise the candidate to drop out and endorse someone else. But I could see the writing on the wall, I think, before a lot of other people did. And so what I realized is you have to let people do things in their own time. So it took him 8 months to come around and a lot of the people around him. But I ultimately saw the writing on the wall. This campaign was going to end with him aligning with Trump. Yeah.
Link, Lauren, I appreciate you being with us and sharing that insight. I think it's tremendous. I hope the Trump campaign listens to you. We'll check back in with you in the next little while to see how it's going.
Thank you, Sean.
For those of you, we got another big week ahead. A lot of interviews coming up this week, a lot of great candidates, a lot of insight from the Trump campaign that will bring you as we head into these final 70 days. That's why you need to subscribe, hit that notification button, YouTube, Rumble, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeart, wherever you get your podcasts. We got a great show headed your way tomorrow. We'll see you then. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.